Good afternoon and welcome to another session of ENG4E. That's Grade 12 Workplace Level English, Term 2A, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. I am your instructor, Mike Laverty. Today is Wednesday, March the 23rd, 2023, and we are going over Class 23 today. So Class 23 of a 34 class course. So about 12 with today's class included. So we'll be past the 2/3 mark going into next week. Today's class is covering Unit 4. We're looking at key question 38. This is the final unit in this course, unit number 4. And so we have key question 39 to work on. Then we have key question 40, which delves into job interviews. And once we've got those out of the way, then we're working on a very large culminating activity that's worth 110 marks. And it's worth 10% of your final grade. So I will be spending a lot of time going over that culminating activity. And when you're done with it, you will have compiled an employability skills portfolio. So a very useful document that you can use in the future to help you obtain a job and continue your job search as you work towards getting your Ontario Secondary School Diploma, your OSSD. So we are in week 6 of a 9-week course. We've got 4 weeks of classes left, including this one. And graduation day is June 15th. I mentioned that in yesterday's class. Good to keep that in mind. We've got units 1, 2, and 3 taken care of. And we're working our way through unit 4. And so WASA terms are divided into 9 weeks of choruses, sometimes with a break in the middle, like in our case for March break, but there's 9 weeks of instructional time, and then it's the following week where students are writing their final exam. So all things considered, we've determined that about 10 weeks is a good amount of time to spend on a course. And this of course changes when you're an independent learner and you're not bound to that. But as I like to mention to all my students, you should try to follow that time limit if you can. So we're getting to the point in the academic career, or we're getting to the point in the academic school year where you don't have the time to finish off. You could take care of this course, maybe another, but realistically, completing 2 courses is a lot from now until June 15th. And 3 and 4, for most people, if not all, I would imagine is a little bit out of the question. And just speaking from experience as a teacher, I would much rather prefer you hand in your assignments gradually over time so I can read them and respond to them intelligently and give you feedback, right? So just keep that in mind. So week 6 will be gone after today, and then next week we'll be working on finishing off Unit 4. And I also wanted to develop some time. I think the final exam for sure will be week 9, and then I think week 8 we will, as I mentioned before, I think we'll have a little bit more time to work on our novel study. I think we didn't give Where the Rivers Meet its proper time and justice, right? So it's a great book. I really enjoyed reading it, but I think we need to spend more time talking about it, especially from the student's point of view. So you have more to say and write about, and there will be questions about the novel on the final exam. So the time we spent talking about the novel in more detail will be time well spent. So if you're listening to us live on the radio at 91.9 FM, thank you for joining us. You can phone the studio at 1-807-737-56 4017 or the toll-free number 1-800-465-7144. You can also listen on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972, and you can log in at Zoom. So go to zoom.us, click on the Join button, and the meeting ID is 417-6699-799. And if you can't listen to us live, you can watch on YouTube, and maybe some of you are watching on YouTube right now, so thanks for doing that. Check out my playlist for all the videos on ENG4E. You'll also find ENG3E and OLC4O, the other two courses that I teach. Reach out to me directly at mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Send me a message. Look for Laverty Wasa, Laverty Laverty space Wasa to find my professional account. And phone the studio, phone the Wasa building at 1-807-737-1488, extension 2211, or the toll-free number 1-800-667-3703. Yeah, dial 2211 to get my extension. And if you don't know who to talk to, then just hit 0. And especially if you want to talk to a counselor and plan out your next moves and just think, just have a conversation with someone and say, like, look, I know graduation is coming up because my teacher told me about it, and, help me out here. What courses can I take? Is it realistic for me to complete these courses? And, I just want to mention that you can't repeat work from a previous school year, right? So once this school year is over, it's over, and then you've got to start thinking about the next one, right? So you want to put the time in and get your courses done now and not have to have your work get held over. No, sorry, it can't be held over, but any work you complete this school year but don't finish, you can't use that next year, right? So if you've been taking the course for about 5.5 weeks, you should have completed all the assignments in Unit 1 and 2, and you should have started working on the Unit 3 assignments. And hopefully, at this point, maybe even thought about the Unit 4 assignments that we've just started our discussion on this week. But realistically, Units 1 and 2 are taken care of, and you are moving forward into completing Unit 3. So we'll start today with a quote of the day, and then we will talk about the key question 38, which is writing a cover letter. And our learning goals for today are to analyze a cover letter and review its format. So once again, we're paying particular attention, paying very close attention to format, looking at the pattern, the template, the model, right, on how something is written. We're analyzing it, which when you analyze something, you break it down into its component parts, and then you sort of see how all those parts work together to make a complete document. So in this case, we're going to be closely examining cover letters. You will take notes while watching a live demonstration on searching for job postings, so we'll do that as well, right, because that's why we write cover letters, to get ourselves a new job. And then your success criteria, so you'll know you've been successful if after completing a search, either online or through bulletin boards or newspapers, you can write down a list of potential employers and job opportunities. And you can begin drafting a rough copy of your cover letter, key question 38. So that's where I think you should be at. Or that's, the two things you need to do upon watching and listening to my class today. You can then, start drafting up your cover letter after you've looked at a couple of potential places that you could apply for to work. And, okay, that which now leads us to our quote of the day. Principles to remember about cover letters specifically. Have a strong opening statement that makes clear why you want the job and what you bring to the table. 2, be succinct A hiring manager should be able to read your letter at a glance. And B, sorry, 3, share an accomplishment that shows you can address the challenges the employer is facing. So that's great. I love that. That last one is probably the best advice I think anybody could receive before they start to write a cover letter. You know, tell the employer about something you did in the past that could potentially help them solve one of their problems, right? Because that's what a lot of this is really about. It's you're doing research and you're looking at potential employers, and again, this fits in really nicely to our continuous discussions in this class about format and purpose and audience. And when you write a cover letter, I think sometimes you can get really obsessed with just your own point of view. And of course, you need a job and you want to get hired and you want to start making some money and you want to support your family and all those good things. And so you're looking at it from your perspective. It's like, hey, I'm awesome. Hire me. And that energy is good, and that enthusiasm is going to take you places. But you have to think about their point of view as well. You've got to think about your audience, right? So who's going to read this thing? What kind of company am I writing to? What challenges are they facing? Right from that quote, right? Address the challenges that they're facing. What kind of work are they engaged in? What gets them fired up? What are they trying to do? What's their mission? What's their value, right? So think about those kind of things and then include a statement like that in your cover letter, which is, of course, easier said than done. But you can't do that stuff until you research it. But, so you have to know what you're talking about. And I guarantee you, employers will be very happy to see you've done your research and you can speak intelligently about the kind of work that they're doing. All right, so I'm reading directly from the handout. So ENG4E, Unit 4, Planning to Enter the Workforce. We are looking at key question 38. Writing a cover letter. You are to choose a suitable job advertisement from a newspaper. It could be a Sulico Bulletin, Wawate News, or another larger paper. And I will mention that you don't have to use a newspaper. If you want, you can use like an online bulletin board or a job posting you find posted on a website for a company. So you can do that if you want. And then we're going to have a look at both the Bulletin and the Wawate News today to see what's out there. So you can use a paper. You can use like a larger paper like Thunder Bay's Chronicle Journal, Winnipeg Free Press, for example. You might want to use those too. And I'm reading from the assignment now. Following the sample cover letter on page 9, so that's page 9 of your handout. You've got a cover letter there. Your task is to write a cover letter in response to your selected advertisement. You are to do a rough copy, handwritten, of your letter, and then revise and edit it as necessary. You are then to produce a final copy of this letter on a computer. Both the rough copy and the final copy of your cover letter are to be submitted for marking. As you prepare to develop your letter, think about your purpose and audience and provide the most important details of information you can as an introduction to your resume. Once again, there should be no mistakes with your spelling, grammar, and punctuation. So good to mention here that cover letters work in combination with a resume, and some jobs ask for a cover letter, some of them don't. It's probably better off to just do one anyways. If they don't need it, they can just discard it, but if they do need it, it does help. And your resume, one of the big distinctions that you can make here is that your resume, it really talks about your past. It really focuses on your past, your past achievements in life. Whereas the cover letter is talking about your past, but it's more, I would say it's more focused on your future, right? It's your future and your past, right? Those two elements are going to be talked about in the cover letter, right? Where the resume is exclusively like it the resume is basically only talking about your past. It's talking about your past education, it may talk about your current job, but it's going to be written in the past tense. And your education, your interests, your skills. So it's really talking about your past and your present, I guess. And the cover letter, I think the emphasis is more on like the future. It's like, I want to be considered for this job, and if given the opportunity to work at this job, I will bring A, B, and C to the table. And you're mentioning the past, but the reason you're talking about your past is so you can create a future, right? It's like at my previous job, I implemented this new strategy that changed everything. And if you give me a chance, I can do the same thing with you guys, right? So that's really what you're communicating. You're saying like I've had a lot of success in the past, and if you give me a chance, I'm going to make things happen at this organization, and I'm going to contribute to the work that you're doing. So that's the message you're trying to communicate here with this cover letter. So we've got some places we can look for job postings. The assignment asks you to go to newspapers and to gather information from local newspapers. So we can start with that, but just know that your job search can be go beyond just looking at newspapers. So with that in mind, I will share with you my Google screen, and if you're listening on the radio, I will narrate what I'm looking at here. So if we go to Sioux Bulletin newspaper, if we just Google that, and I go to the website. So, I don't have the physical paper of the paper in front of me at the moment. I think there's a copy on my desk, but right now I'm just looking at their website, and you've got the masthead up here. That's their logo with Sioux Mountain, and of course a reference to the legend of Sioux Lookout. The man with the eye, his hand over his brow here, looking towards the chutes, looking for the flash of the canoe paddles. And underneath the masthead, we've got the various pages found on this website. So home, news, and of course, I want to click on employment. And so SLFNA is looking for many positions. So we've got client services department, we've got dietary aides, housekeeping aides, security personnel, airport personnel, patient navigator, speech language pathologist, occupational therapist. So, just this one organization is looking for so many people that so it's not really a posting for one job. It's like there's plenty. So www.slifna.com.careers. Maybe if we click on that, we can find some more stuff. slifna.com/careers. Okay. If we go back, again, just looking at the Sioux Lookout Bulletin website, we've got NNEC is looking for a youth residential worker, a student well-being worker, a Pelican Falls Center student well-being worker. We're looking for a finance officer. The Bulletin itself is looking for a reporter. So that's a job that I've always kind of thought about doing, right? So you've got Must be an excellent writer, willing to work odd hours, including some evenings and weekends. Knowledge and understanding of Sioux Lookout area, including northern communities, will be an important asset. So there we go. So you've got the job posting there. Salary based on ability and experience. Yeah, kind of wonder what that pays. And I'm just looking at the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority, their job posting. We've got yeah, it said to go careers, and we clicked on careers. There we go. View open jobs. Let's see what we got here. So these are all the jobs they have open. They've got a lot of them. So you could consider applying for one of these jobs, right? So dietary aid, that's a job that I used to do, right? Working in the kitchen. So let's have a look at that one. Okay, so that's one you could apply for. So maybe just real quick here, we can look at Wawate News. And if we go to Wawate News, they've got a similar layout. They've got their home, news briefs, jobs. So if we click on, they used employment on the bulletin site. The Wawate News is using jobs. So they've got a victim witness liaison working for the Anishinaabe Legal Services Corporation. Domtar is looking for a maintenance and engineering manager, an environmental coordinator. The municipality of Sioux Lookout wants volunteers, and one of the power line construction companies is looking for a junior financial administrator. The chief executive officer / president of SLIFNA, right? So that's a big one. We didn't see that one posted on their website, but they're posting it here. And a community release and reintegration worker for the Anishinaabe Legal Services Corporation. Domtar, electrical manager, purchasing manager, a buyer. The Thunder Bay Art Gallery needs an executive director. That's interesting, right? So, and then we've got NNEC with many, many positions available. And so a lot of these bigger companies like NNEC and SLIFNA, for example, if you go to their website, they'll have like more information on there. So I think with that in mind, I might go to, just looking at this dietary aid job that we saw on the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority website, and they do have the job application form filled out on their website, right? So if I was interested in this job, I would, put my information in here. M. Laverty at nnecschools.org. Put in the WASA phone number. Do you self-identify as Indigenous? I do not. Where did I hear about this job? As we saw, it was in the newspaper, right? And then additional comments and questions. You would put some stuff there, and then you would drop your files here, right? So you would attach your resume and attach your cover letter to that, and then you would submit, right? So it's like the workplace application form, resume, and cover letter all in advance, right? And so when you're on the job hunt, what will usually happen is you'll have your resume, you'll have a cover letter, and you'll write them up. And then depending on how many jobs you apply to, you will probably change that cover letter depending on the employer, and you'll have like a basic template in place. And then you'll change it accordingly depending on the job you apply for, right? So you're not rewriting it every time, but hopefully you're doing your research and you're submitting it that way. All right, so for this example, I could say that so I found the job that I could apply for. It's this dietary aid job, And so that's like step one of the process. So I could apply for that job. That's one that I've found. If I go back to my slide deck here, I've got some other ones like jobbank.gc.ca. There's indigenouscanada.org and aboriginalJobBoard.ca. So I would look at those two, as those two are, those databases are focused on jobs for Indigenous people, many times offered by Indigenous organizations. We looked at Sioux Bulletin, we looked at Wawate, we have looked at SulakauJobs.com in the past, and that's like you might find like a local job listing in your community. And then there's also like government job banks like jobbank.gc.ca. So that's the government of Canada, and they're not, some of them are government jobs, but most of them are, jobs at other companies, so you can look at those. You can look at a local job bank, and then you can have a look at something like Indeed.com. And, Indeed.com is great because you can just go there, Indeed.com, and then you can limit it by Sioux Lookout, Ontario. So if I leave the job title, keyword, company blank, and I just go to find jobs, it pulled up 235 jobs at the in or around Sioux Lookout, right? And then there's the salary estimate. I can let's look at the lower end of the scale, job type. See, I only want to see full time, and you can start putting in some filters here, right? Maybe the industry. Let's see. Let's just do the healthcare jobs. Now we're down to 96. Sioux Lookout's an option. Remote, nope. Date posted. Let's see how many have been posted in the last 3 days. One. Let's look at last 7 days. 6 jobs. Okay, so 6 jobs in the past 7 days. So I've got Tikanagan is looking for a residential care worker, info systems, residential placement desk worker, respiratory therapist, mental health worker, Ontario Native Women's Association, and yeah. Let's have a look at this mental health worker and see what kind of so Indigenous women are encouraged to apply. First preference will be given to all qualified Indigenous applicants. Make a difference in the lives of Indigenous peoples by supporting and advocating for positive change. ONWA, which is the Ontario Native Women's Association, prides itself on providing all employees with a total rewards package that is generous and supports our workforce and their family members. So there you go. That's a potential job somebody could apply for. And these are, it's a very extensive job posting. There you go. Let's see here. Residential placement desk worker. Working for Tikanagan Child and Family Services. Qualifications needed. Okay, basic understanding of the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act. Okay, so that's good enough for now. We'll keep those 2 jobs up for grabs, but then I want to just jump into our discussion on the format of a cover letter. So step 1, you find the job you'd be interested in applying for, and then step 2, you delve into the cover letter. So up on the screen here, this is a job application that a job cover letter I found online, and it's useful as a template. It's got a lot of good things going on for it. I believe it was a real cover letter that got somebody a job, and then the names and the places were changed, but the message itself is a real example of a job cover letter that got someone the job, that it did the job it was supposed to do. I'll stop there with my repetition of the word job. So let's have a look at this cover letter, and and we'll break it down by its pieces, right? So there it is. It's all there in one shot. Kind of hard to read that, but I just wanted to show you the formatting in one piece. This is what we call the block format, where everything is justified along this left-hand side. You see that left-hand margin. It's written in blocks of text. And modified block format is when the sender's address is over here on the right-hand side, but this is just regular block formatting. So it's the sender, space, date, space, who it's to, a space. Then you get the content of the letter, which is typically 3 paragraphs. So I want you to follow that 3-paragraph model. And then, well, technically 4, but the 4th paragraph is the send-off. There's really 3 paragraphs of content here. And then a closing paragraph that gives the employer some next steps and thanks them for their time. So let's have a look. So this is what we call the header of your cover letter. And this is where the letter begins. So you start with your information. So you give your full name, your full name, your address, and your contact information, which is really important, right? So when you apply for a job online, and when the job application is done strictly through an online portal, or you're emailing it to an employer, and you're not dropping off a physical thing, not a thing, but an actual piece of paper and a resume. Usually you don't have to write down your full address. The employer wants to know where you're from. Like, they want to know what city you live in, especially if you don't live in the city where they operate, because then they have questions like, okay, you don't live here, are you going to commute here? Are you going to move here, right? They just want to know where you're from. They don't necessarily need to know your exact address and your box number, right? They just need to know that you're from a certain community, and they need to know how to contact you. So, I mean, this may seem like really obvious to some people, but I've had this mistake a few times where, I interviewed someone and all they left was an email address, and you email them for an interview and then they don't get back to you. And then they finally do get back to you, and they go, "Oh, well, I hardly use that email address," right? It's just like, well, don't leave contact information on your cover letter that you don't regularly check, right? So list a phone number that is active and that you will check, right? And once that resume is put out there, be ready for that phone call and check that voicemail. And don't put an email address that you don't use a lot, right? Use an email address that's on your phone, and you're going to get a ping, and you're going to know when it goes through, right? So list the contact information that you use all the time. Then you put a space, and then you put the date, the date you're sending it, right? Very important to put a space in between here, right? So the date that you're sending it. Then you put their information, okay? So in this case, the company that Maxine Francois is applying to is the Craft Pages, and it says attention manager, full name, and then their address, right? The address of the company. So use their full name if you have it. Do your research. Do your research and get that full name, right? Use a real name. Spelled right, right? Spell the person's right. Spell their name right. Make sure you got the right person. Look at the job posting. The job posting will tell you who to send it to. And if the job posting says email it to the human resources manager, go to the website and try to find out that person's name, right? And put that name on your letter. If you can't find out their name, just put the job title, attention hiring manager. right? Try to get as specific as possible. Really important. All right. Then you have the salutation, right? So if you know the person's name, just simply say "Dear Nancy Wilson," for like as an example. If that's the manager's name, the person who's going to be reading your application. If you don't know their name, just simply say "Dear Hiring Manager," comma, right? Dear somebody's job title, right? And that'll work. That's good enough. Look for it, phone them, try to find that information. If you can't get the information, you can just simply say "Dear Hiring Manager" or whatever the job title may be. First paragraph. This is where you reference the job you're applying for immediately. And then you tell the employer why you want to work for them and their team. So this letter reads, I'm excited to apply for the job developer position. Sorry, I'm excited to apply for the web developer position at Craft Pages. I've been programming websites and using CSS to create user-friendly experiences since I was in middle school, so it's always been a passion of mine. I've also been intrigued by your company ever since it won Most Innovative at the National Web Development Awards 2 years ago. I strive to stay on the cutting edge of web design and development. So when I saw this job posting, I knew I had to apply. All right, so those are all great things to mention. And again, I talked about this in yesterday's class. There's nothing wrong with using flattery and complimenting an organization and talking about their past achievements. But you got to be careful with that. You can't you can't make statements you can't back up in person, right? So don't say you heard about this company winning the award and you got excited about it, right? There has to be more to that story. So if you mention that in the cover letter, you better be able to talk about it in the interview, right? So don't just mention stuff that sounds good. The cover letter is just bringing up stuff that you can talk about in the interview. Really, it's and if the employer reads it and gets excited about you as a potential applicant, they're going to want to know more about the stuff you bring up in this letter. The second paragraph. This is where you discuss your most relevant experience, your skills and qualifications that make you the right person for the job. And Maxine writes, at my current role with Lexar Limited, I constructed a brand new website from the beginning for a startup business, both within budget and ahead of the scheduled release. I spent plenty of time meeting with the client and performing user research to make sure I delivered the perfect product. My new website was responsive, lightning fast, and included the latest e-commerce features, right? So that's great. And that goes back to our quote of the day where I think the best advice they gave was telling the employer a problem you solved in the past and tell them how you're going to do the same with their company. Maxine didn't actually say that here. She didn't say like I'm going to do this at your job or I'm going to do this if I get the job, but I think she's strongly suggesting that. The third paragraph, you can talk about your other experiences, skills, and qualifications, right? So the first paragraph is like, I'm applying for this job, and here's why I'm a good candidate. Paragraph 2 is you talk about your most relevant. That's when like to use a metaphor, like you're playing your best cards, right? And that's that's really good advice for cover letters and resumes and interviews. You want to lead with your best stuff, right? You want to lead with your best examples and put your weaker examples after that. Same goes like if you're writing a letter to the editor or if you're trying to convince somebody you're right and you're having an argument, lead with your best stuff, right? Lead with your best stuff. If that doesn't work, go to the other stuff if you have to. So in your third paragraph, she brings up some other stuff. It reads, one of the factors that really attracted me to this role is that Craft Pages values giving back to the community. In my spare time, I run free web development workshops for at-risk youths. In these workshops, I teach them the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and serve as a mentor. As I grow in my career, applying my skills to help others and make an impact on the world becomes more important. I believe this role would give me that opportunity. Then you got a closing paragraph, which reads, "Thank you for your consideration and time. I'm looking forward to learning more details about the position in the company. If you have any questions about my qualifications, please feel free to call or email me." So in the closing, you thank the employer for their time, and then you give them a call to action or next steps. That's a really important concept to keep in mind, the concept of next steps and calls to action. When you give someone a document, when you give them any kind of a business form or any kind of business communication, they should know what the next steps are. And if you give someone, if you send somebody an email, or if you send a letter, or if you send a memo, or if you just have a conversation with someone, and then that conversation is done, that person has read the email, and they don't know what you wanted, and they don't know what they're supposed to do, that's going to create a lot of confusion. And at worst, it could create a lot of animosity and even anger from that coworker that you've kind of wasted their time, especially if you're dealing with your boss. Like if you raise a whole bunch of problems with your boss but don't really give them a next step, like what are you expecting to do about it, right? So you give them a next step saying, please contact me at these numbers, or check out my website, or something, right? Just give them a clear next step. And then you close off with your complimentary close and your signature. So you use a word like sincerely, regards, best, respectfully. Then you actually sign the document, and then you type your name underneath. And even if you're doing this digitally, I think it's best to print off a piece of paper, sign it, and then re-scan it as like a saved PDF. It's nice to have that personal touch, and I always didn't like it when people wouldn't sign their paper copies. So always sign that copy. Put your signature down. All right, so we've got just a few minutes left here, not much. So just enough time that I can bring up some further resources for you to explore for completing this this assignment. I've got an article from the Harvard Business Review. How to write a cover letter. I've got Indeed.com, 12 tips for crafting a great cover letter, and 11 skills to include in your cover letter. So you could have a look at those three articles at your own time. I will put the links for them in the description on the YouTube video. So you can always consult them that way, or if you're just hearing about them now on the air and you want to know about them, just send me an email and ask about class 23, where we talked about cover letters. What are those resources? That could be a post I can do on Facebook as well, right? So there's 3 websites you can go to give yourself some more information, and one of them is the Harvard Business Review. They had a good post about writing cover letters. So how to write a cover letter. So that'll just give you some more tips about writing a cover letter. There's so many resources online that give you more information about particular formats, right? Of any kind of business documentation. Certainly anything we've mentioned in this course, you're going to find lots in there. This is where I got the principles to remember. That's the do. Under the don't, they said don't try to be funny. Too often it falls flat, right? So testing out your new joke material, the cover letter is not the venue for that. That's not where you're, don't try to be funny. Don't send a generic cover letter. Customize each one for the specific job, because a cover letter almost becomes meaningless if the employer knows that it's just general. And it's like you're applying for every job with the same cover letter. And it's going to be pretty easy for them to know that you've not made it specific to their employer. If we think about the example I just shown you, Maxine Francois, she's applying for a job with Craft Pages, a website development company, and her cover letter is so specific that it's very clear she's done her research, and she's not sending that letter to everybody. She's only sending it to that one company. And she might be applying for like 5 other jobs, and she may repeat some sentences, and the general format and template is going to be the same, but the content is going to be different. So don't go overboard with flattery. Be professional and mature, right? And so you could argue that the woman who wrote the article, or the woman who wrote the letter we looked at, she's verging on going overboard, especially bringing up the fact that the company won this award. So you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to go over the top and say stuff like, like nobody in the world's doing the work that you're doing, and just you want to just highlight the things that that group is doing, and speak their language, and that's really all you have to do, and just be realistic about what you can bring to the table. And then the other ones we had was looking at Indeed.com. Cover letter, I think it was skills. That's the one I want to for sure have a look at. 11 skills to include in your cover letter. So these are skills that you may want to include in that cover letter. So you may want to mention. So we have problem solving skills, and then I like how it's even more specific than problem solving. So it's not just a simple fact that you're a problem solver. It's like you're good at analysis, you're good at negotiation, you're good at observation, you're good at brainstorming, right? You could say, I'm an adaptable person, and I can adapt into different situations, right? But then you can be specific and be like, I ask for feedback for continuous improvement. I learn to accept changes and adapt to different circumstances, right? So these are things you can talk about, right? And you can talk about them in how they're specific to the job you're applying for. So communication skills, right? That's what this course is all about, is developing your communication skills. But you have to, don't just tell the employer you're an excellent communicator, because that's great. I want to know specifically what makes you a great communicator, because not everybody is great at all things, right? Some people might be good public speakers, but their writing skills aren't the greatest. So what are you? Are you a verbal communicator, a written communicator? Do you have presentation skills? Are you an active listener? Are you a mentor, right? Do you communicate that way? What kinds of communication have you done in the past? What can you do in the future? So just again, it's all about being specific with who you're applying to, right? And maybe just to quickly close, if I go back to this job posting that I could apply for, this dietary aid job that I could apply for, I can always go to the SLIFNA website. Whoops, I did that wrong. And then one thing I can do is I can go to their about section, and and I can think like, where am I going to work in terms of this this dietary aid position, right? And so you might want to talk to other people who've worked for the organization, other people who have worked as dietary aides. You want to do some research. You want to get information about it, right? If I just Google dietary aid, SLIFNA, and then we see what comes up, that job posting comes up. We've got other job postings. Workopolis, that's another great website to look at. So there we go. So we've got, so it says, where did I read that? It talked about dietary aides working in the hostels, at the, at the dietary aids work in the JMK hostels in Sulakau to offer healthy and traditional meals to guests, right? So you just do some research, you find out where you're going to be working, which location, and then you're going to include that information on your cover letter. All right, so that's all the time we have for today. We will join again next week as we go further into Unit 4.